everybody. Larry Powell here, your host for Studio HFL, and we're here on another live with interview. And my guest tonight, Jari Villanueva. I said that correctly, right? All these years I thought it was Yari. Don't tell
It's
me it's
it, well,
Jerry.
it's Yari.
It is Yari. Okay, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah. Well, if to be totally Finnish, it's Yari.
Yari.
Yeah, I was born in Finland, and that's
And
the correct pronunciation.
it would have the two dots over the.
No, actually not.
No. Okay.
No,
Well,
just
that's
one
a
one
German
dot is
thing.
fine enough for this Finn. But when
Got
I
it.
was growing up, I anglicized it, of course, to Jerry, and then but I've gone back to using Yari because I am a Finn.
Um, by nationality and like born in Finland.
Sure was.
No
Can't you tell
kidding.
by my accent?
Yeah, well, it's East Coast, but I mean that's really East Coast if you're going to go that far.
Uh, I'm kidding. I actually, yeah, I came over when I was about a year old. Um, but so I grew up here in the United States in Baltimore.
So, how close to Helsinki were you living? Were you born?
Actually, I was born about I'd say about 50 kilometers uh, east of Helsinki in a fishing town. It's called Kotka, but the actual town that I was born in was Karhula. So it's that's like a community suburb
Hmm.
of Kotka, right on the Gulf of Finland.
So, of course, you're heading east at that point. How close are we getting to St. Petersburg? How close are we getting to the Russian border?
Not far at all.
Hmm.
Actually, a little close for my comfort, I would say.
Yeah. Of course, everybody's becoming an expert in geography these days, unfortunately, right? You have to figure out, first of all, where Ukraine is, and then Finland and all the Baltic states up there. But
Yes, and actually, in 1939, Russia did invade Finland, and it was the result of that was what was called the Winter War that took place in the winter between 1939 and 1940. Finland was able to push off the Russian invasion, but wound up losing a lot of land to Russia, including some islands where my mother was born. Throughout her entire life, that was one of the things that really upset her, and she had to live with the fact that the island that she was born on it was no longer part of Finland. And then when she passed away, we family took her ashes as close as we
mm,
could to the island and scattered her ashes in the Gulf
wow,
of Finland.
wow. Have you been back to Finland? Other than
Yes,
that, yes.
yes, twice. I was actually on tour both times with a brass group from Minnesota called the American Poyat, the American Boys. They are a seven-piece brass ensemble that plays Finnish brass music, the Finnish septet brass, which was very popular in Finland around the turn of the century. Um, that type of ensemble was used for dance music, um, and it was a big form of entertainment.
So, are we
Even
talking like
Sibel-
the Finnish version of a polka band? Not to.
sort of exactly, except it was all brass instruments.
Okay.
E flat cornet, two B flat cornets, E flat alto horn, an B flat tenor horn, a baritone horn, and a tuba. That was the standard instrument. It's like a small English type of brass band, but very popular in Finland. And even Sibelius wrote music for that ensemble.
No kidding.
And then when the Finns came, of course, the United States and settled, in the Midwest, in Minnesota, in that type of that area of our country,
Hmm.
they brought that tradition. And so the American Poyat, who's they're based in Minnesota, they have recreated that music, and they put out a couple CDs. And I was able to go twice to Finland with them on a trip, and each time I stayed an extra week so I could tour Finland as much as I could.
I've no, I've only been to Helsinki, but I've been to Sweden and Norway, and Denmark, but I remember visiting Norway, and someone asked, "How many Norwegians are there here?" And they said, "Well, the state of Minnesota probably has more Norwegians than Norway itself." Is there something about Minnesota that is attracting from the Baltic area? Is
It's interesting. I'm not sure why. It may be that the area in Minnesota is exactly like how it is in Finland.
Mm,
And if you're a Finn, you really like those cold winters and the dark and stuff. And that's a lot of Finnish migration wound up there. I'm just assuming, and maybe we'll have one of my friends. From Minnesota, who's a Finn,
mhm.
tell me exactly why that area was settled. But interestingly enough, there was a huge Finnish population on the East Coast in Baltimore, where I grew up. There were a number of Finns who were located here. There was a Finnish community,
Mhm.
so much so that they had their own Finnish hall set up in East Baltimore. Uh, very, very pro union type of an organization. The Finns were very active in the democratic movement in Baltimore City, and they were very vocal and very important in the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s in Baltimore. Um,
How so? How did they make a
well,
difference there?
well, a lot of the plants would not hire African Americans, and the Finns were very strong socialists and union workers, and they went and stood up for the African Americans, making sure that they were able to get work in plants like down at Sparrows Point in Baltimore and other union places within the city. Um, and my mother and my older sisters are very proud of that
Mhm.
fact that the Finns were very strong in doing that. Now it's unfortunate that community has gone away. It's
Mm,
not as strong as it used to be. There are pockets of Finns throughout the United States. One of them is, interestingly enough, down in Florida,
mhm.
where I have an apartment down there, an area called Lantana, which is just south of West Palm Beach.
Mm, mhm.
There has been for many, many years a strong Finnish community down there. The Finns like to come down there during the winter months and vacation there.
I have to tell you, when we started this, this is not the direction I thought we were going to go. I didn't know we were going to talk about Finland at all, but this is all terribly fascinating. I mean, but this is the kind of stuff I like. Is when you mention not just that there's settling the Finns settling in Minnesota and on the East Coast, but then to be involved in the civil rights movement. I think that's stuff that I want to know about, and stuff you're probably not going to cover in high school history, right?
Not as much, although the high school I went to, Patterson High School in East Baltimore, was an ethnically diverse school. Baltimore, of course, is had pockets, neighborhoods made up. You'd have a German section, an Italian section, a Jewish section, a Greek section. I mean, so you can go through Baltimore today and still go drive through Greek Town, or
Mhm.
Little Italy, places like that. Um, so this was, the atmosphere that I grew up in,
Mhm.
and it's not as much as it used to be. That sort of went away with how the migration always happens in major cities and people move away from the area, so it's not as ethnically diverse as it was back in the 70s and 80s.
Mhm. So I'm curious. Your parents migrated or immigrated to the States when you said when you were a year old.
Yes.
What were their occupations? What were they doing? What drew them to the States?
Well, my father's actually is Peruvian, so I'm actually Peruvian Finnish. And everyone says, "Well, how did they get together?" And I said, "Well, it's simple. World War II. My
Oh.
father had come to the United States in 1940s and joined the Merchant Marines.
Mm.
And then after the war had become, it was a seaman for the rest of his life, worked on merchant ships.
Mm-hmm.
Met my mother in Finland. She was, I believe, working on a ship at the time. And they met. They actually, I'm the third oldest. So there were two sisters who were born before me in
Mm-hmm.
Finland. And then we moved to the United States in, I think it was 1956 or 57. Moving first to New York City for a short period of time, then down to Baltimore, where we lived in East Baltimore, and then to Northeast Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
But it was because of the war. That's how my parents met. So I have a little bit of Peruvian blood in me, and Finnish blood, and of course American blood.
Well, of course, now I'm thinking Yari would be the Finnish, and then Villanueva, of course, that would be the South. Well,
the Spanish. I always like to tell people, I'm part Finnish and part Spanish, so that makes me Spanish.
Spanish. Okay, I'm trying to think of a way to circle back to this. We're just going to take a quantum leap.
Okay.
So the first time I saw your name, it was attached to an arrangement, I think, of America the Beautiful, which was a very Carmen Dragon-like arrangement,
right,
and done for brass quintet. So congratulations on that, because that's one of my favorite orchestra arrangements to play. And then you reduced it for brass quintet, and man, that means we could do it all the time.
Right. That piece, and then the arrangement I did of the Simple Gifts, the Copeland piece,
yeah,
which has been performed quite a bit. I love being able to take a large work and score it down for a small ensemble. And it's something I learned basically out of necessity. Like when I was in high school and then going to Peabody, I wanted to play some great works, but you only had a brass quintet to work with. So, hey, we'll write it, score it down. I had a theory teacher one time. He said, anything can be reduced to 4 voices, anything, even Wagner.
He might think that's an insult, but okay. So you attempted to do that, yeah?
Sure.
Okay, so well, here we go. I'm going to stick with the arranging composition thread for just a second.
Okay.
Obviously, America the Beautiful, Simple Gifts, that wasn't all that long ago. Those weren't your first arrangements. When did you start to dabble in arranging or composition?
When I was in high school, actually. I started doing some stuff. I did an arrangement for the school choir. What the world needs now is love. I also did some brass arrangements to back up the chorus for some Christmas things. And then when I was a senior at high school, a young lady who played French horn came from another school, and she was part of a Salvation Army family,
Mm-hmm.
and they would do programs every week. And one of the things they did was to do a Christian musical. So they asked me, "Hey, would you mind like doing some arrangements so that we could have a few instrumentalists?" And so that was my first
Mm-hmm.
real jump into orchestrating something on a large scale. And I still even remember it's a Christian musical called "It's the Lord's Thing." And, it was a scaled down little musical, nothing on the big things like Camp Kirkland, the great arranger,
right.
nothing like the stuff he does today, but it was just a small high school, getting a saxophone, a couple trumpets, trombone, bass, and rhythm together to back it up. And I learned a lot. And then when I went on the Peabody, I started doing a lot of arrangements for different types of groups. When I was at Peabody, there was a big ragtime revival going on. It was because of the movie The Sting, and everybody was playing the entertainers. So we actually formed a ragtime ensemble, and I started doing all the arrangements for that group.
Mhm.
And then I would write also for brass groups. I also did some concert band stuff. I got hired to do an original musical that a local high school was putting on. So I started getting my feet wet into that, not with any really formal training in orchestration. It was like learning as I went along.
Mhm.
And then I had the greatest teachers at Peabody, theory teachers and orchestration teachers. Jack Carton was one of my theory teachers, Ray Sprinkle. These guys really influenced me and really helped me to learn the instrumentation
Mhm.
and also how to write in a sensible manner. Although I still get a lot of people who yell at me as for writing things without enough rests.
Well, we yell at a lot of people for doing that these days. They just assume
Yeah.
we can go forever. So, did you go to Peabody specifically for composition and arranging?
No, actually, I went to Peabody as a music education major with a minor in trumpet. Uh, and I think that was a pretty wise choice on my end because the music education program at Peabody was really superb. And working with elementary, middle school, and high school programs, I started like jumping in and writing things for them. And that when you get to write for like a middle school band, you really learn quickly the limitations
Mhm.
of players and how to write for them and how to make things playable and sound good. And I really enjoyed that experience. And uh, the student teaching that I did at schools really added a lot
Mhm.
to my education.
Are you
And
familiar
so I
with Brian Balmages at all?
yeah, Brian, I actually Brian's dad, Fred, was before me at Peabody. I think Brian came right after me.
Well, so Brian comes to Indianapolis to do recordings for all of his, I think through FJH Publishing. And so I'm usually in the concert band there recording.
And,
And
and
the arrangements are terrific. And we're sitting there thinking These are middle school arrangements. Like we didn't have stuff like this when I was in middle school. I mean, it's stuff that a second and third trumpet player would really enjoy playing, and they could play it with greater ease. Just great insight from Brian on that. So you're talking about the same sort of thing about trying to make things interesting and
yeah,
accessible.
and I'm sure Brian did the same thing. I'd love studying scores and with you looking at the arrangements done by like John Kenyon
Mhm.
and John Edmondson, those guys who could, John Tachenhorst,
Mhm.
uh, those writers for school bands. Another person I really liked was Bob Loudon, and
Mhm.
my the people who I really admired on the higher scale uh, were Philip J. Lang
Mhm.
and of course Robert Russell Bennett. Always enjoyed that stuff. And then as I got older and started reading more and studying, I found out how much I really enjoyed the writings of Henry Fillmore, who Fillmore knew how to write for school bands.
I have to say, I think I've only done marches that he's done. I don't can't recall actually doing any concert pieces.
Well, he did some concert pieces, but I'm talking about the band books, the march books he did for.
Okay.
But you won't recognize them as being Henry Fillmore because they're written under different names. The Harold Bennett Band Book, for example, the Harold Bennett Band Book is all easy marches that are playable
Mhm.
by a middle school band. That was all Henry Fillmore.
Mhm.
And his wife had in later years talked that said how he spent more time on those arrangements, making sure that they were all playable within good keys for younger players. And you could pull out those books today, and they are wonderful. One of the marches that comes out of that is a march called Military Escort.
Mm-hmm.
And that march is like one of the most played marches ever. Even Sousa said that he wished he had written it.
Do you enjoy playing marches? I mean, you probably played quite a few.
23 years in the Air Force. Yeah, we played a couple of a couple of them here
A
and
couple
there.
of them.
I love marches. I think they are terrific, and I think that uh, every band when they do a program, they need to include a couple marches, or
Mm-hmm.
at least two marches on a program, because there's nothing more American than a good march by Sousa or Fillmore or Carl King or any other
If I
great.
say Fred Jewell, would you agree with that?
I'd love Fred Jewell. Fred Jewell, when you play his marches, you can actually smell the elephants.
So I mentioned that name because there's a trumpet player, educator here in town, Charlie Conrad, who did a doctoral project on all 149 Fred Jewell marches,
Wow.
and I was part of a group that got to play all of those, and I can tell you there were some good ones. He had a few, but oh my goodness, I couldn't believe we played through every one of those. But but there's so much style. It's not just oompa, right? I mean, there's so much style to learn in playing a march. It's not just the stereotypical dee da 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 da, right? I mean, there's
Right.
articulation, there's dynamics, there's everything in there.
That's right. And one thing too about marches is that uh, when I go and hear a concert of marches, sometimes I'm very impressed, and a lot of times I'm very like not happy with the way marches are played. Everybody just they seem to throw them off. Oh, we're going to do a march on our next concert, and maybe they'll play it down once, and that's it. There are so many great things you can do with marches, and especially with Sousa marches. His marches, of course, were never meant to be played as written. He would always, like on a repeat, the brass would lay out. It would be
Hmm.
the woodwinds who would play.
Hmm.
He would make sure that certain accents would happen in spots. And a lot of times they're not written. You have to understand how marches work to sort of intuitively know where to put these things in. One of the reasons Sousa marches work so well is because he had a phenomenal bass drum player in his band.
Huh.
Gus Hemke, I think it is, probably screwing up his last name, but Big Gus on the bass drum would always give these oomph, oomph things. And if you listen to the Marine band,
Hmm.
when they play like Semper Fidelis, and they go through the first string and you hear this like cymbal and bass drum give
Hmm.
punches, that's all because of Gus's work. And he would always notate that in. Um, so things like that, really help make marches. And
Hmm.
I just wish that all community bands would program at least one or two.
Hmm.
I know that the band, the Repaz band, they had a march that was written for them,
Hmm.
which is also one of the most played marches ever written. Um, and they always end their concert with that march that was written for them. They're one of the
Hmm.
oldest community bands in the United States. Um,
You alluded to you could smell the elephants on the Fred Jewell March. Of course, you're thinking about circuses, but I have always thought we played marches too fast. And there are some that just, boy, they feel great when they're like 108 or 112.
yes, absolutely. I am in agreement with that. That sometimes marches can be played too fast. However, there are some marches, the Carl King
Hmm.
and the Fillmore marches that are really supposed to fly.
Hmm. That's barn burners, right? I mean, isn't that kind of
Right.
what the right circus B and all that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you mentioned the Air Force. 23 years with the United States Air Force. Where were you stationed during all of that?
I spent the entire time at Bugling Air Force Base, which is the headquarters of the United States Air Force,
Mhm.
and it's where the Air Force Band is. The Air Force Band is located. It's now uh, Joint Base Bowling and Anacostia.
Mhm.
They've combined the bases, but the Air Force Band, of course, which was formed in 1942, and then as the Army Air Corps Band, and then
Mhm.
became, the Air Force Band in 1947, has been at Bowling since that time. Uh, I joined the Air Force Band in 1985 after teaching for a half a year in middle school,
Mhm.
and I was offered the job, so I took it. Unfortunately, leaving halfway through a school semester, which
Mhm.
I didn't really want to do, but the Air Force was so tempting. And
Had you any aspirations of military service before that?
not really. Although uh, I had been offered uh, the third cornet spot with the U.S. Army Field Band at Fort Meade
Mhm.
back a few years earlier, and I turned it down. Dummy now, turned it down because I didn't want to do all the touring. I wanted,
Ah.
because at that time they were on the road quite a bit,
Mhm. Mhm.
and I felt I didn't want to do that. So I went into teaching and then left teaching uh, to go back and get my master's degree at Kent State University,
Mhm.
and then came back and auditioned for the Air Force Band. And the reason I had to leave in between semesters is that after when I auditioned for the band, I wasn't accepted. So I took a teaching job. And then 3 months into the teaching job, the Air Force called and said, "Hey, you were number two. And number one can't make it for whatever reason. And so if you're still interested, we'd love to have you."
Wow. So I was stationed just across the river from you. I was at the Pentagon when I served. I was Air Force, and
Oh
uh,
yes, I yeah,
went over to bowling a few times. Basically, I think that's where the my dentist was. I would take the bus from the Pentagon over, um, and I actually did audition for the Air Force Band in it was late '89, and this
oh
was just as Desert Eagle was was starting. It wasn't Desert Storm yet; it was Desert Eagle. I think that was the precursor. That was the ramp up to. Boy, that was late '89, early '90. I think all that
yeah,
happened.
when all that was starting to happen, I remember.
Yeah,
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 you auditioned on trumpet
I did.
for the concert band.
Um, no, I don't know that there was an actual opening in the band in DC, but I worked in personnel. I was just I don't know, a corridor down from the guys in the band office. And so I would get to know them. I'd stop by and chat with them every now and then. And I started to pick their brain. Hey, any chance I could get an audition? They helped set up an audition for me. So I went over and played. And they said, we'd like to offer you a position. It would have been in one of the regional groups. That'd have been fine. But that's right when they stopped all the transfers, and there was a drawdown on administration and a buildup on flight line, and I was offered an early out, and so I got out.
Yeah, that was around the time that I think the Air Force cut like 11 bands.
Hmm.
The
Oh
late
yeah,
80s, beginning 90s. There was an
yeah.
incredible drawdown. And we also lost some very fine officers at that time, some captains who were in the band program at that time.
Hmm.
And what a real shame. I'm
Hmm.
thinking I know of two captains who were dismissed or
Yeah,
told to get out basically,
yeah.
and they would have been both of them would have been great assets to the Air
Hmm.
Force program,
Hmm.
and just a real shame. At that time, speaking of that time, I auditioned to be a band officer
Oh,
at that time, and as the story of my life happens, it all came down to two people. It was me and a fellow who was actually a clarinet player from the Army Field Band.
Mhm.
And they took him, and which was great because he went on to a really terrific career conducting
Mhm.
in the Air Force Band. And then, as it turned out, I was able to stay with the band and continue doing what I love doing.
Mhm.
Playing, writing for the band, and being as involved with as much with it as I possibly could.
Mhm. So the first time you were on funeral detail and called to play taps, what was that experience like? That very first one.
Pretty nerve wracking.
Mhm.
um, it's really is OJT. They explain exactly how they're going to do it. You go out a few times, you watch somebody, but then you go out and you actually do it. And for a trumpet player, sounding taps at Arlington as a member of a military band, you're going to find yourselves in various situations. You may be playing as part of the band, so the
Mhm.
band will march down from the chapel or if another area from the cemetery to the gravesite.
Mhm.
Once you get there, the band will play as the casket is brought up to the site, and then you step out of the band and you wait for the firing party, and then you sound taps. The other one is where they do standard honor funerals, where it's just the bugler, the honor guard
Mhm.
um, are there. So you have to make sure you know what your cue is.
Mhm.
Most of the time, you wait for the firing party and then you sound taps. But occasionally, there might be an opportunity where there is no firing party, so you have to make sure and work out that signal ahead of time. Who's going to signal you to do the call? Uh, but that was one of the greatest things I enjoyed at Arlington, was able to be able to sound taps
Mhm.
for the many funerals. I sounded taps for General Ira Eaker, who was the commander of the 8th Air Force when
Mhm.
he passed away. I also sounded taps for General Godfrey McHugh, who was the Air Force aide to John F. Kennedy.
Wow.
Was actually He had actually accompanied Kennedy to Dallas and refused to leave the side of the coffin all the way back to Washington. Um, so when he passed away,
Mhm.
it was my turn to play that. I thought it was an incredible honor, to do that for this man.
I've always viewed that as an honor. It's one of the more nerve-wracking, right? I've not done it near as many times. Over 10,000, I think, is what you had
It
said.
Yeah, I should have kept track. I mean, probably about 5,000 in my 23 years, but
Yeah.
since then I've done it
Yeah.
so many times for so many veterans, and
Yeah.
I really have lost track. But
My
you
my
know,
dad
e-
was my dad was career Air Force, and I played for his funeral. We talked about it before he passed. He didn't want a military service. I said, "No, Dad." You know, and so okay, fine. He agreed.
I'm I'm glad you did that. I also did that for my dad,
Mm.
and he was buried at a state veteran cemetery. Fortunately, the laws had changed because just within a few years before he passed, because since he was a merchant marine, he wasn't eligible for burial in a veteran cemetery.
Oh.
So that law changed, and then at the time, when the time came and he passed away, I went there, and
Mhm.
I remember going up to that cemetery. They had a bugler from the uh, the honor guard, the National Guard honor guard.
Mhm.
Was a contracted bugler, and I came in with my uniform, and he looked at me and I said, "You know how to play taps?" I said, "Yeah, I think I do." So, but
Yeah.
it was a little tough, doing
Yeah.
it for your dad.
Yeah.
But
But
it,
truly an honor. I couldn't imagine. Well, and I tell you, the detail that showed up had a digital bugle, and look, I'm glad that taps is sounded for any veteran. But if you can do it live, yeah, you got to do it live.
exactly, and I'm not going to disparage the electronic bugle, the digital bugle, because it does have a place. if there is no bugler at all available,
Mhm.
it's better than nothing. And
Right.
I know some people will say no, it should be silent, nothing. But in reality, the family wants to hear taps.
Mhm.
Um, Absolutely, I would advocate it's got to be a live bugler.
Mhm.
But if there's no one available, you can't find anyone, then you got to have something. The only problem is, and by the way, this is the 20th year that thing has been in operation. The unfortunate
Wow.
thing about it is that a lot of VFW groups, American Legion groups, and even some military groups insist on using that, even if a live player shows up. And that's absolutely wrong. That if a live player is there, it should take a back seat
Mhm.
to a live player.
Where a couple questions here that I want to remember. One is I want to ask about trumpet versus bugle and your thoughts on that. But the other is when did this interest in taps and the history of taps, uh, when did that really start to interest you?
Well, I've always, but I was a Boy Scout bugler,
Mm.
and of course, going through Peabody and learning about trumpet literature and things like that, learning about the natural trumpet. That was one thing, but as far as taps went, it was about like a year or so in to my time with the Air Force, and we're on the bus heading over to the cemetery, and the drum major turns around to me and says, "Do you know the history of taps?" And I stared at him for a while and said, "Not really."
Mhm.
And that was like the call for me to do some research, and that began the long trip that I've had that brings me here today.
Mhm.
Started finding out everything I could about it. I went to the military library up at Carlisle, Pennsylvania, went to the Library of Congress, the National Archives, started finding out as many books as possible to find out what the real story behind taps was,
Mhm.
what it was all about. My journey also took me down to Berkeley Plantation in Charles City, Virginia, where taps was born. Because in a nutshell, taps was composed during the summer of 1862 along the James River at Berkeley Plantation. It was called Harrison's Landing at that time.
Mhm.
It's where the Union Army came to rest and recuperate following the 7 days battles in June of 1862. They were camped there for the entire month of July, and it's during that time that bugle call surfaced, composed, and I'm going to put that in quotes,
Mhm. Mhm.
composed by General Daniel Butterfield
Mhm.
and first performed by his bugler, Oliver Wilcox Norton. Subsequent research has found that Butterfield really didn't compose the call. What he did was he revised an old bugle call that had gone out of use prior to the Civil War, changing the last 6.5 measures, rewriting that just a little bit into the 24 notes that we know
Mhm.
today as taps.
Do you know the original? What he
Yeah,
adapted?
yes, it was under the title of Tattoo. It's an old tattoo call
Mhm.
that had surfaced in the military manuals around 1835 in the manuals of written by Winfield Scott. So we refer to it as the Scott tattoo.
Does it
Um,
convey any of that same emotion that what we know as taps now? Does it have any of that same?
it can. Well, the tattoo calls at that time were long calls, and they were meant to basically have the soldiers come back and form up for the last roll call of the day. And as in modern tattoos, and in fact, if you listen to a tattoo call from almost any military around the world, you'll hear the last part of that being performed in like a slow version, and you can almost
Mhm.
hear the bugler,
Mhm.
tattoo, tattoo.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that last 6.5 measures evokes our modern taps
Mhm.
today, although there was no indication of any kind of tempo markings in the original.
Mhm.
So basically, by the Civil War, that call is been replaced by a new one that is heard during the Civil War during the 1860s, and then
Mhm.
that one goes out of use by 1874, and the tattoo that we know today, heard on military bases, uh, takes over.
Mhm. Okay, so now to the question of trumpet versus bugle, and if you're playing a bugle, what key?
Whatever key works for you. um, Everyone, yeah, that's always been question.
Mhm.
Why use a bugle? I've got a perfectly good trumpet here. Well, that's
Mhm.
fine, and there's nothing against using a trumpet or a cornet to sound taps. The bugle, I think, is much more of a traditional instrument. And God bless the United States Army Band, Pershing Zone. They have understood that tradition for 100 years of their existence. Um, having a bugle that when when you're at the tomb of the unknown soldier, you use a bugle. You don't use a trumpet because that's the traditional
Mhm.
instrument. They also use a bugle to sound the call at certain funerals in Arlington. So
Mhm.
they've kept that tradition alive. Um, I've always personally, I feel that it's a call that should be performed on a bugle. Um, and as far as the key goes, um, B flat is the one that most people use because they play it on the open partials of a B
Mhm.
flat trumpet. However, you hear the call also in G, and that stems from the model 1892 trumpet in G, the typical Boy Scout bugle
Mhm. Mhm.
that was uh, that was came into use at that time, and actually still is in use today. And people like to use that G bugle because it's a little easier to
Mhm.
play. Um, you don't have the register isn't as high.
Mhm.
And by the way, that G bugle was the, the reason that all the drum corps that started, all
Mhm.
the DCI and all the
Mhm.
drum corps that started in the 1920s were in the key of G
Right.
because they first started using it on G trumpets. Then they added one valve,
Mhm.
then two valves, then three valves, and now they switched to B flat.
Yeah.
Except for the Marines. The Marines are still using the G side.
Yeah. I was in drum corps for a while, but there was a guy that brought a soprano in that had just the thumb valve, the piston this
Right.
way, and then of course they had a rotor. They eventually attached here, and then of course then the two pistons.
Right.
Um, they were not the easiest things to play.
They are difficult to play. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't understand all the acoustics and all the physics behind it, but G bugles are just not as well made as B flat bugles. Uh, Although I had been proven wrong on that a couple times.
Well, hasn't
Uh,
Canstel made a good
Cancel
one?
made a terrific G.
Hmm.
Carol Bugle, and here's a little plug. I
Oh
sell
yeah,
Carol
I just saw that.
bugles, and Carol makes a nice G, which I didn't know about.
Hmm.
They sent one to me, and it's really terrific.
Hmm.
I also have in my collection um, a a Bach Stradivarius G bugle, very rare. It's not the Apollo model. That's the Boy Scout type bugle
Hmm.
that Bach made in the 1930s, but this is an actual Stradivarius model, and it plays like velvet in the key of G. And every time I play it, it's like, wow, I don't understand how why it plays so well, but it's got that Bach sound.
I wonder how many production models were made it.
That's the crazy thing. No one knows for sure because although Bach kept shop cards on everything, there were times when he would get an order and make some bugles, and there wasn't really much follow up to it. And
Hmm.
that goes to another question I get a lot, where people will send me photographs of bugles asking me, can I date when it was manufactured.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really tough because bugles don't have serial numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can come within a decade or so, depending on certain the way it was manufactured,
Mm-hmm.
especially with like Khans and kings, you can sort of tell. And then of course during World War II, you can tell which were manufactured at that time because of the stamp that was put on the bell.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, it's very difficult to pin down exactly when a bugle was made.
I have to tell you, I appreciate so much the history, that the amount of research that you've done and made available to everybody. I had researched this. I wanted to get it right. I wanted to get the performance of taps right. And I knew there was some rhythmic, everybody seems to take a little bit of liberty with this, that, and the other. I thought, you know what? I want to do it right. I wonder where I can go. I know where I can go to find out how. And so I went to tapsbugler.com, and there's the plug for that terrific website. Great
Thank you.
history, and pictures of the right way to stand. The posture, the way to do it. Um, so I would encourage anybody that's going to have the opportunity, the honor to sound taps, go there. Even if you're going to do it once, just understand the history, the tradition behind that. So
And thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, and I do think that we tend to lose sight of what that tradition is. When you're asked to play at a funeral, you're just part of this great tradition that's been part of of the history of our country.
mhm,
And it's only right to say, well, let's see if we could play it right. Let's play it correctly.
mhm,
Do the tradition, do it correctly. And a lot of people will say, well, what's the big deal? Why? Who cares? I'm going to play 24 notes.
mhm,
Well, it's because there is that tradition there,
mhm,
and we try to do it as correctly as possible.
mhm,
And I like to get that information up there, so at least there's a resource that people can come back to and say, "Oh, how do you play taps?" Okay, well here it is.
mhm,
And I try to cite the documentation for it too. I'm not
mhm.
just making stuff up as oh, this is the way we should do it. Everything that I put up on the website, there's a reason for it. There's documentation that backs it up.
So it's not a Wikipedia bugle
Right.
site, right? I mean, this is actual tried and true factual research stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And I try and I'm very happy if someone catches like mistakes, um especially spelling mistakes, or just like, oh no, that's wrong information. I'm more than happy to make changes and correct. I also on tapsbugler.com, I have great stories about buglers.
Mhm.
We had some wild characters, who played the bugle. One guy for 36 years who would play reveille each morning in his hometown upon a perch that he built in his backyard. We had a bugler here in Baltimore who used to go to ball games dressed in a baseball uniform and would play bugle calls. Um, of course, and then stories, the first bugler does ever sound taps at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, Frank Witchy, his great story about his playing. Um, there's all kind of great stories, and then of course I try to also uh, talk about protocol things too
Mhm.
on the website. How to what's the best thing to do, like when you hear taps, what are you supposed to do when you hear the Star Spangled Banner? Because I do get a lot of questions about that, and one of the questions that have come up this past week, people asking me, oh, we're going to play the Ukrainian anthem and the Star Spangled Banner, which comes first? And so I like to explain the protocol for
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
and
So what's
and
the
then
answer to that?
oh it's if we're in the United States, Ukraine comes first and the anthem, our Star Spangled Banner, comes second. I
Mhm.
always like to say, think of it as a baseball game. The home team bats second.
Gotcha.
So if the only time here in the United States where it would be reversed is if you were actually at the Ukrainian embassy in
Mm.
Washington.
Mhm.
then you're on Ukrainian soil. So then the U.S. anthem would go first, and Ukrainian would go second.
So here's a question. I've thought, you've seen, especially at the State of the Union address, you see the people stand, and I would certainly stand in solidarity. But during the playing of a Ukrainian or another country's anthem, I I don't know that I would put my hand over my heart. I think I save that for the for my country.
I think you see that too. I've noticed that like even with the president at one of the state arrivals at the White House, when the foreign anthem is played, the president is standing at attention, but
Mhm,
then when the Star Spangled Banner comes up, the hand will go over
mhm,
the heart, or the salute will
mhm,
happen.
mhm.
Um, uh, with these type of protocols, we have to always remember they're not law. No one's going to be
Right.
arrested on this. Nobody's going to come out and beat you with a baseball bat if you do it wrong. It's just suggestions,
Yeah,
and it's based on respect
absolutely.
and courtesy and protocol.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and there's no better way of showing respect than to stand when you hear somebody's anthem being
Mhm.
performed. And I was the recipient of some of these honors when I visited Sweden to guest conduct one of their military bands. um, we did the anthems, and people stood, and I heard even heard people sing the words of the Star Spangled
Mhm.
Banner, which really got to me.
Mhm.
But then afterwards, we had a little party, and it was time. It was in the afternoon because this was an early afternoon concert. But at the party, they came to me and said it's time to take the flags down. And when I went outside, they had the U.S. flag flying, which just really almost brought me to tears. But they
Wow.
said, we're going to play our flag lowering, and then you can play uh, the retreat call as the
Mhm.
flag goes down
Mhm.
and to the color. So they honored me by, having the flag up and then brought down with the proper honors
Mhm.
and showing respect and courtesy. And that's what it's all about.
Yep. I I work at a local high school, and they play before the morning announcements. They play "To the Colors," and everybody stands for the pledge. Faces the flag. Um, Although not everybody does. And that kind of gets to me. But I understand, right? This is part of
Yeah,
freedom, but
absolutely.
and I respect that. But still, secretly, I would like. I wish everybody would stand and show that. But so 23 years in the Air Force, and I was trying to do the math here. You went in 85, 95, 2008, roughly. You got out,
Right.
right? Since then, what's been keeping you busy? I mean, other than the Baltimore Orioles baseball games, right? Which I know you're a fan.
Well, I'm a huge fan. I have not posted much on Facebook about baseball because I'm a little upset because they haven't
Mm.
figured out how to get their heads together and get this strike over and get back to playing baseball. But
Didn't they learn from the last time they did this?
it's they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Mm-mm.
Um, the more they stay out, the more people are going to be staying away,
Yep.
and it's unfortunate. But I've been an Orioles fan since I was tiny. I'm going to die an Orioles fan. I love the team. I love baseball in general.
Mhm.
I just want them to just get out of this boardroom and let's play ball. Come
So
on.
you know what? If the Bengals, after what 30 some years out of the playoffs, can make it to the Super Bowl, then maybe the Orioles can dig themselves out of the basement,
Well,
right?
yeah, it's the last World Series win was in 1983.
So it's time, right?
It's
It's
time.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's time. So anyway, when I left the Air Force because I actually joined rather late in life. I was almost 30 years old when I
Hmm.
got to the band.
Hmm.
Um, so in 2008, I'm looking towards that 55. You know, have to get out. Um, a job came open with the state of Maryland as for the job of director of the Maryland National Guard Honor Guard.
Mm-hmm.
I interviewed for that job, and they took me,
Mm-hmm.
and for almost 10 years I was the director,
You weren't
program
second. You
manager.
weren't the second choice for that job, right?
Actually, that's another funny story.
Oh no.
They took a long time to pick me, because there was another person involved who had these political connections and was trying to get the job, who was not really versed in military protocol, funeral, anything like that, but he had, these connections. Thank goodness the adjutant general at that time, Bruce Tuxell, who I thank to this day, stepped in and said, "We're going to hire this guy." So he hired me, and I was there for almost 10 years. A wonderful experience working with 70 Army and Air Force personnel in providing military funeral honors throughout the state of Maryland.
Wow.
Um, with that 30,000 funerals in that time period that I was responsible for.
Good heavens.
Yeah, I didn't play them all, but
no, but yeah, yeah. And you hear about these numbers on occasion about how many World War II veterans die each year. Of course, now we're getting to the point where that number is going to drop drastically. I mean, we're just going to run out of veterans from that era.
We are back, during that time, 2000, 2005, 2008, the number was that they were passing away at the rate of about 1,000 a day. I don't know what the numbers are right now, but you're absolutely right. We're almost at the end. They're all in their upper 90s now, and so we're gonna lose that generation, and we're going to get to that point, like with Frank Buckles, the last World War I veteran. We're going to have the last World War II veteran, and it might take about another 10 to 15 years for that to happen, but it's going to happen.
But I'm so grateful that we can do even something like this, right? Even this conversation we're having right here could be archival, right? Footage. If somebody wanted to be able to find out something about Yari in 20, 30, 40 years, right? But you know what I mean? So the documentaries, even something like Saving Private Ryan, when you see the stories and or Schindler's List, right? And you're encouraged to maybe dig deeper into the war and things like that. But then you start to maybe get curious about documentary is not the right word, but interviews with people, real people who were there. I don't know. I find that fascinating and terribly moving. Just trying to fathom, what they were going through.
Yeah. Stephen Ambrose was great at that, for recounting stories. And, I mean, all his books were, stories that were told to him by those who fought during that time. And yeah, that's what it's all about. The personalized stories of what they did during World War II. And now we're getting, of course, to that time where we're hearing a lot of the Vietnam veterans too, who've got the stories of what it was like to serve. And of course, yourself being a veteran, as myself, we have our war stories too. Maybe not as, of course, nothing like what they went through. But
so here's my big travesty as an E3. Working at I was working for a 3-star, and I was an admin, and I was responsible for supplies for the department. And there was a conference coming up, and they asked me to order 200 clear name badge holders and 200 boxes, 20,000. Showed up on a pallet outside the office. And my sergeant said, Airman Powell. And I was like, yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, come on, if that's the extent of my mistakes, right? That's not so bad.
No, yeah, that's not bad. But something like that happened with the Air Force Band. Those archival boxes that they store music in.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing happened. It was like the decimal point went to the wrong, whatever.
Right, right.
The comma went to the wrong place.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
it happens.
yeah. So, what rank did you retire at?
I retired as a master sergeant, E7.
Mhm. My dad, I think, was one of the first master sergeants. Of course, he got in '50, and I think, of course, senior and chief weren't ranks. Well, I don't know when those came along, but it took a
I think
while.
they came in the '60s
Hmm.
when the military added the eights and the nines.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I should have said this at the top. I'll say it now. Thank you for your service, and
And thank
not
you for
just
yours.
thank you very much, but not just serving in the service, but the service you provided to all those families, and the honors. And I think that's boy. If they couldn't thank you every time, which I know they couldn't, I know they wish they could.
It was an incredible honor, I
Mhm.
will tell you. And I tried to approach every single one just like the honor guard does. That
Mhm.
the funeral we're doing right now is the most important one,
Mhm.
and we're absolutely, we want to make it as perfect as possible.
Mhm.
And doing, having that kind of thought in my head was a strong motivator.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, I can remember the last service I did at Arlington.
Mm.
It was I had just about to go on terminal leave because I was starting my new job with the state of Maryland.
Mhm.
And I did a full honors funeral in the morning with the band. And then in the afternoon, I had two standards to do. The
Mhm.
last one was a retired master sergeant. Um, uh, and I remember doing that service and then spending some time with Father McGill, who was the Catholic chaplain,
Mhm.
and just talking to him and reminiscing. And he was terrific, and he offered a really nice prayer for me,
Mm.
as I left, and thanked me for my service,
Mhm.
to Arlington. And that was really special. And I still have the job sheet, the
Mhm.
piece of paper from that
Mhm.
that day.
Mhm.
uh, but it was very, very special. And I think it was also Lincoln's birthday too, which I'll always remember. As
Good way to
that was
remember
my
that.
last day,
Yeah.
last day serving my
Yeah.
country at Arlington. And I'll tell you, it's the toughest thing, because once I left the gate, I knew that I would never
Mm.
be able to come back to play as a military bugler at Arlington, or have a chance to play at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier.
Mhm.
That was now, past.
Mhm. Did you ever play at the Tomb of the Unknown?
Yes.
Okay,
Now,
so you did have that, but you were saying you wouldn't be able to do it again. I understand.
right.
Okay.
Only a few times, because that's the Army band's domain up there. But
Mhm.
the Air Force would occasionally do full honor services there, and full honors wreath services. And we would use an Air Force bugler who would step out of formation
Mhm.
and sound taps. And
Mhm.
so I got to do that a few times. And I will tell you, that was the most that was the scariest thing for
Wow.
me in my career. Knowing that I was playing in the the the, the most sacred spot in the
Mhm.
military, and playing, for the tomb. And then I when I did the exhibit at Arlington, the bugle exhibit, I actually had some photographs of some publicity photos made
Mhm.
at the tomb. So they're on the internet. You can see me standing by the tomb
Okay.
with my bugle. And that was a great day to be able to go onto the plaza,
Mhm.
and do those photographs.
I have. I'll have to bring it. I'll show it. I'll scan it and send it to you. My picture of the Pentagon, and where I worked. I mean, it's
Oh,
not the same as that, but I do keep it. It's a nice way to remember. Um, you know, what I was doing there, and that people actually appreciated it. Hey, I want to read some of these comments on the side here.
Oh, sure.
Maria McBride, Yari, you are a true inspiration. Beautiful mission.
Oh,
John Herndon, and for my dad. Uh, Buddy Cook, better than the CD player, right? I think that's talking back to
yeah.
the digital bugle. John Herndon, yep, I had to fight off a digital bugle too. Afterwards, they asked me if I live nearby. John Herndon, thank you, Larry. This is great. Learning tons about Yari and tradition. You're welcome very much. Lynn Campbell, thanks to both of you. You're very welcome. John, true, that's one. The one we're doing now is the most important. Oh, right, alluding back to the job in front of you, the funeral you're standing at right there. And Maria McBride, thank you. And let's see the last one. Lynn, thanks Yari for all you've done and do to educate buglers and the general public about taps. Yes, again, thank you for that. It's again tapsbugler.com. And again, there I think there are links. If I'm remembering, there are links to all kinds of outside resources there too. Yes.
Yes, a couple of things that are going on. Of course, the big link is to tapsforveterans.org, which is our service that helps provide live buglers for military funerals around the country. We have about 1,000 buglers who've signed up, and it's a very unique service in that everybody who joins Taps for Veterans auditions via a video submission to YouTube that goes to a private channel. No one can see it except for us. That's how we make sure that these are decent players. And then the way we have their system set up is that when a request comes in, it goes directly to your cell phone as a text message. So if somebody makes a request, within a second, you get a bing on your cell phone if you're in that area. So it's pretty cool. And so Taps for Veterans is also involved with a number of projects. We have, I had to write them down here because we've got so many things happening. Taps Across America, which is the program. This will be our third year with CBS News, having performers around the country. And this is more than just trumpeters and buglers. Anyone who plays a musical instrument and wants to play taps, in honor of in memory, during the National Pause for Remembrance at 3 p.m. on Memorial Day. We're going to be opening up registration. There'll be more things coming from CBS News. Right now, I talked to the producers last week, but of course, with everything that's going on in the world right now, that's on hold until probably April. I mean, the information about it, it's going to happen.
Good.
And the past 3 years were quite a success. We are also involved with 100 Nights of Taps Gettysburg. This is a program that was founded by a terrific lady by the name of Wendy Allen, who lives in Gettysburg. This is our sixth year. For 100 nights during the summer, we have a bugler that sounds taps at 7 p.m. at the Soldiers Monument in the Gettysburg National Cemetery. And this program is sponsored by the Gettysburg Military Park, the Pennsylvania Lincoln Fellowship, and Taps for Veterans. And it's always well attended. Several hundred people every single night to hear a bugler sound taps. And we've got programs coming up. We also, Taps for Veterans supplies a bugler every single day at the National World War I Memorial in downtown DC. It's a brand new memorial, opened up in April this past year. And it has been a wonderful thing. Without fail, since May 24th, we've had a bugler who sounds taps in a World War I uniform at the memorial at 5 p.m. every day. So we've got that coming up. We've got, let's see now, a couple big things. Of course, the 100 Nights and the Taps Across America. We're going to be doing a Buglers Summit. And we'll be sending out information on that. September, we're looking at the 16th, 17th, and 18th of this year at Berkeley Plantation, where Taps was born. It'll be a chance for buglers to come down, have some presentations about like military funeral honors, how to perform taps correctly, where to stand, talk about that.
Hmm.
Buddy Cook, who
Hmm.
mentioned that one of his things, Buddy Cook has compiled a great anthology of bugle music, and I'm trying to get him down to talk about a little bit of history of bugles
Hmm.
throughout the centuries. Um, and we're also going to have one or two buglers from the Army Band in Washington who will come down and give a presentation on what it's like to
Hmm.
perform taps at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. People just see the video where they have the bugler walk out and play.
Hmm.
There's a lot of backstory
Hmm.
that leads up to that moment. So we're going to be having registration for that opening in April also. So just make
That
sure.
sounds fascinating. I'm going to have to check that out. And then, thinking about that bugler walking out, I wonder if it's the same kind of preparation. I'm sure it is, as the guards. Their uniform, their rifle, their weapon has to be absolutely meticulous.
Absolutely, that bugle is polished. The uniform, they always make sure that uniform is spotless before they walk out. And there's great stories. The buglers, the Army buglers at the tomb are referred to as Sergeant B by the guards,
Hmm.
because they don't, they never know who the
Oh,
bugler is. So it's always Sergeant B is
Sergeant
here
B.
today. um, and they do a wonderful job. And of course, when you're a bugler, and then you're standing next to these guys who are like perfect examples in uniform, it's you want to try and be your very best, and these guys measure up. It's wonderful.
That's and that's something very. I guess sacred's a good word. I've been there, and it's you don't want to speak, you don't want to interrupt the solemn nature of that. I mean, I don't. I mean, I felt kind of overwhelmed when I was there. Um,
It is overwhelming, and every time I visit there, it's to this day when I have to go to Arlington for whatever reason. When I go through the main gates, I almost start crying because it's I'm back home
mhm,
almost.
mhm,
I know every street. I know how to get around the cemetery without any maps.
mhm.
And it's amazing to for the opportunities that I have to go back there.
Mhm.
Um, and one of the other things too, I've left this sort of music legacy at Arlington, because the band still play my arrangement of "Going Home"
Oh,
at funerals. So that's kind of neat to know that they're still playing it.
we just played Dvorak 9 a couple of weeks ago, and actually thought about that arrangement. I mean, of course, the oboe or English
Oh,
horn
right.
plays it a little bit differently, but yeah, that's another terrific arrangement. Um,
Thanks. And that came about because we were looking for a secular piece of music to
mhm,
perform, because a lot of time, when we perform funerals at Arlington, you have to be aware that it could be a Catholic service, a Protestant service, or a Jewish service. So you want to make sure you play the proper hymn. But then sometimes it's a non-denominational
mhm,
funeral.
mhm,
So we wanted to find something besides America the Beautiful
mhm.
to play. And that was suggested to me. And I did the arrangement, and then all of a sudden it caught on. It was used at the disinterment of the unknown soldier
Hmm.
when they brought him up for DNA testing. Um, they played that. It was used, of course, in the movie Clear and Present Danger,
Mhm.
and because of that, the Reagan family wanted it played at the president's funeral when he passed. So and so now that has become the piece that's performed at Andrews Air Force Base at presidential funerals when they leave Washington for the last time.
Wow.
Um, the band is there playing "Going Home," so I'm honored about that. And everyone asks me, "Oh man, you must be rich off all those royalties." I said, "Well, I get a check once a month for it
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
Uncle Sam. So,
Well, that
so
is quite a legacy. That's
yeah, well,
and when
I'm
the next
happy
time
with
I
that.
play that, I'm gonna remember that too. Hey, I don't want to forget. Let's see, Buddy Cook. Thanks for the shout out, Yari. I'm hoping to be there in September. I am too. I've got to check that out. I would love to find out more.
Yes,
Sebastian Reyes Linus. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Um, Little bugle, American flag. I'm sure that's a salute right there. John Poe. Do you know John? Uh,
John Poe. Yes.
okay. Howdy, Yari. In over 10 years, I've only been denied playing live at Jacksonville National. The first was by a Marine who insisted that no one but a Marine should sound taps.
Yeah.
Then she produced the digital. The other
Yeah.
was for an Army veteran. The NCOIC wouldn't allow me to both participate in our Veterans Honor Guard firing squad and sound taps, but I've had no problem since. I did
That's
about
good.
70 services last year. Yeah, I get uh, this. Boy, the Marines seem to have the most problem with the Air Force. That was what I remember when I was in. I got along with the Army and the Navy just fine. But
The Marines, are steeped in their own tradition, and they want to do it a certain way, and it's a shame, unfortunately, because a lot of times the way they do it is against what's written in manuals.
mhm,
Um, and I love the Marines. I think they're wonderful. But the one thing I just wish they would say, hey, if it's a live bugler, let the live bugler play. And in my
maybe
experiences, I've had no issues working with Marines. A lot of times, when I've go as a civilian, um, and I think one of the reasons is that when I wear a suit, I always wear all the medals
mhm,
that I've earned. And so they'll take a look at that. They'll say, okay, this guy's, he's been
right,
around. He's paid
right.
his dues, so I'll play. And I tell you, as I tell buglers, if you work with an honor guard and they're not sure if you're playing, offer to play for them. Say, hey,
Mhm,
before the family gets here, just to
right.
make you comfortable, give you that warm and fuzzy. I'm
Mhm,
happy to play for you to make
mhm,
sure you know what I'm doing.
yeah. I don't know. Maybe the Marine buglers are too busy looking for valve oil. Yeah. All right. That's a horrible joke, but
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
hey,
No, I do. I love my Marines. I lo- every service I work with, I have nothing but highest
mhm,
respect for what they do, because a lot of these guys, they take a time off to make sure that the family is honored in the proper way.
well, my oldest is Army National Guard full time. I learned to love the Army by proxy. But no, I do appreciate everybody that serves. And we could talk more, um, but I'm looking at the time. We've been on for a little bit here,
Yes,
and I looked forward to this for such a long time. So thank you for taking the time to sit down and chat tonight. I appreciate
it's
that.
it's my pleasure, and thanks to the folks who are like watching this, and a shout
Mhm,
out to all of them, and thank you. And um, I stand on the shoulders of a lot of great people.
mm,
I really do, because I can't do the research. I can't do any of the stuff with the nonprofit organization without support from great people. And
mhm.
they I from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. And I'm just going to keep doing this as long as I can keep doing it. And it just means a lot. And as I always like to tell people, because people ask me, well, why are you doing this? Why aren't you just like happily retired? And it's because I do have a debt that I need to
Mm.
repay, and I'm
Wow,
trying to do that. And
wow, wow! A heart of gold, there, Yari.
well,
Yeah. Well, you know what? I hope we get to cross paths sometime soon. I'd love to buy you a cup of coffee. And
awesome.
although caffeine before playing taps might not be a good idea, but Hang on just a second, and I'm gonna sign off here. I want to thank everybody that tuned in, is listening tonight. Of course, Yari, this is going to go on the YouTube channel. It'll be there for people to check out after the fact. But
Great.
yes, I'm looking forward to that one too. So, all right. Good night, everybody. See you next time.